Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with the mighty Jingles. I did say there were going to be a lot of Warships videos this week. I didn't necessarily mean there were going to be a lot of World of Warships videos. Obviously yesterday was my visit to HMS Belfast, the Imperial War Museum ship next to Tower Bridge in London. Very, very similar ship to the USS Cleveland, which is the ship that I'm driving in this Tier 9 battle here in World of Warships. I have to admit, when I saw this battle loading screen and I looked at the kind of ships that I was going to have to fight in this game, I was not feeling very confident. We've got 3 Tier 6s on our team, and there are 3 Tier 6s on the enemy team, and everybody else is Tier 7, 8 and 9. We have an Iowa, they have an Izumo. We have a Baltimore, they have a Baltimore. They also have an Ibuki Tier 9 cruiser, and we... okay, they've got more Tier 9s than us. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting match. Not to mention all the Tier 8s and Tier 7s, and I'm down here in my lonely little Tier 6 Cleveland light cruiser. But the Cleveland's a good ship. And this match here on Islands of Ice, which is, I think, rapidly becoming one of my favourite maps. Not that there are that many maps available in World of Warships yet, but rapidly becoming one of my favourite maps in the game, is the game in which I'm pretty sure I scored my highest amount of base experience in any game of World of Warships. I'd like to say it was because I'm awesome. It wasn't. This match is going to show you what happens if a Tier 9 enemy team ignores a Tier 6 light cruiser and just lets it get on with business. First target spotted, destroyer. This is obviously after patch 0.3.1, so I don't think I fire a single shot of armor piercing in this entire match. There are circumstances where I should have been firing armor piercing. People are complaining that cruisers just spam high explosive now, and well, yeah, cruisers do, but that doesn't mean cruisers should. There are certainly situations, and I'll show you one. Oh, scored a hit on the destroyer. Come on. Yeah, more hits, good stuff. Bang. Critical damage, knocked his engine out. He's dropped the smoke screen. He's getting away. Or is he? I'm definitely not the only one shooting at him, but there are dive bombers coming in. I'm trying to stay close to our battleship so I can cover them. There's that destroyer again. He's popping in and out of visibility in the smoke screen. Oh, he's on fire. He's on fire. Scored another hit, another crit. And I'm shooting down some of these dive bombers. They're definitely going for that battleship. Hold down control, click on the aerial target that I want to focus my shots on. The destroyer is gone, but he managed to get torpedoes away. Now, I wouldn't have imagined that an American destroyer, and it looked like an American destroyer, would have had the torpedo range to hit me from here, and yep, sure enough, he didn't. Destroyer captains. Number 1 rule: when you're driving a destroyer and you're about to go into battle, before you hit that battle button, check the range of your torpedoes. I see that over and over and over. American destroyers in particular constantly firing their torpedoes at targets that are way beyond the maximum range of their torpedoes and just wasting shots. Another particularly annoying thing that I'm constantly seeing destroyer captains do is they will steam forward at full speed, firing their guns. Not at anything, just firing their guns. Don't do it, guys. Destroyers are very, very fragile ships. They're very, very easy to kill if they are detected. You fire your guns, you give your position away. Wait until you get yourself a situational awareness skill on your commanding officer and see what happens when you're firing your guns. When you think you haven't been spotted in a destroyer, it's quite frightening. Anyway, back to the game. That battleship was taking the brunt of the enemy firepower, but he's now managed to make it into cover behind that iceberg, so I'm getting the hell out of here because now they're all starting to shoot at me. None of those guys are inside my effective range. Another Cleveland there up ahead. Between the two of us, we shot down a fair few of the enemy torpedo and dive bombers who were going for that battleship. Some of them got through, and he also took some hits from the enemy cruiser and battleship squadron you can see down there. I'm just really manoeuvring for position at this point, looking for a vulnerable target, and I think, is that a Pensacola? Tier 7 cruiser? Yep. He's about to come within my gun range. No, he's turning away. He's being shot at. He's turning away to extend the range, so I'm... Well, he's in range, but this Fuso is a much, much more juicy target. The Pensacola was technically within my maximum firing range, but he was steaming away, so by the time my shots actually landed on target, he would have been outside and they would have missed. High explosive here, well, it's not 100% completely ineffective. High explosive is always going to do some damage, and most of these high explosive shots are hitting the superstructure of that fuselage. They're arcing down from directly above because it's maximum range. This is a situation in which my armour piercing would actually have been more useful because it's plunging fire. The fusel's got some heavy armour, but not so much on the decks, and 6-inch armour piercing shots would penetrate the decks, and I'd probably be scoring citadel penetrations here. I'm doing a lot more damage than I did. At the same time, however, if you open up with high explosive initially on battleships, you can set them on fire like this. And the cruiser's 6-inch guns fire so quickly that if that guy uses his damage control ability, which he has done to put the fire out, my next salvo has a very, very good chance of setting him on fire again, and then he's going to burn. And he can't put the fire out. If you can do that with your high explosive spam in a cruiser, and then switch to armor piercing, once you've set him on fire and he's extinguished the fire, then you set him on fire again and then switch to armor piercing. Providing you're at the correct range, and start getting some plunging fire and deck penetration, and hopefully scoring some citadel penetrations. That, to me, seems to be... and there we go, he's on fire again. Ideally, I really should be switching to armor piercing now. But I didn't, because, well, I'm lazy. And he's burning from stem to stern. And he's gone. So that's a tier 6 battleship taken out. They've lost 2 destroyers and 1 battleship. We have lost 1 destroyer. Now I slowed down there in order to maximise the firepower that I was delivering to that fuser, because he wasn't pointing his guns at me, so it was quite safe. But now I'm speeding up again because we've spotted one of the enemy carriers. They've got 2 tier 6 carriers on the enemy team, and that is the Japanese one. That's the Hiryu. Now, I'm not the only one chasing this guy down, and it's quite a quick ship, but I can do nearly 33 knots, and there's a destroyer with me. Now, I've just lost sight of him because my spotter aircraft has just been recovered by the ship, so I'm going to have to get a little closer to reacquire the target, but fired blind, shots hit, set him on fire. It's going to give me some breathing space, and this is... well, there we go, he's burning nicely, but I'm about to come around the concealment provided by this iceberg, and that is a tier 9 Japanese battleship. He has 16-inch guns, and he's waiting for me. Oh crap, here it comes. Bend over and kiss your ass goodbye, boys. I've set him on fire though, but whoa, look at that. 9 16-inch guns. It's an unusual arrangement. All of its guns are in the forward end of the ship. But, again, this is a situation where I would have been far better off firing armour-piercing at that Izumo-class battleship, because his armour is terrible. I think he has a maximum of 127mm of armour, something... it's less than 200, I'm not sure the exact numbers. And again, my guns fire so much faster than his that I can pop a second salvo off at him while he's still reloading. He only got 1 shot at me. 2 would have probably sunk me. 9 16-inch guns. They do a lot of damage. Well, you can see how much damage they did. But that was pretty much the only time anybody on the enemy team bothered shooting at me. I've set this carrier on fire again, which is nice. However, he has managed, and I've set him on fire again. But the dive bombers are coming in. We've shot down enough of them between myself and this destroyer on my port side, and I think the carrier is focusing fire on the destroyer, which kind of makes sense because the destroyer is faster than me and stands a better chance of catching up to him. You'll notice I've lost one of my gun turrets. I'm down to 9 of my 6-inch guns. I've used my defensive fire cooldown to maximise the firepower, and I'm pretty sure that all of those torpedoes were dropped far too close. I didn't even see them in the water. The torpedo alarm went off and no torpedoes. Pretty sure that that carrier driver dropped his torpedoes far too close for them to arm, so myself and the destroyer got away with that. And he's about to go down. You'll note, however, that I am in clear line of sight to almost the entire enemy team over there on my starboard side. Shooting more aircraft down, but none of these guys are shooting at me. Look at that. There's that Izumo. Oh, if I could sink him, that would be amazing. Before he uses his damage repair ability. But those guys are all pretty much the only people paying any attention to myself and this destroyer were the two enemy carriers. As, you know, as is completely understandable because we're going to kill them. The destroyer, it looks like the destroyer's finished off the Hiryu, so that'll be the Ranger. And these are fast ships. The destroyer's dropped a smoke screen, so that maybe that's why these guys weren't engaging us, because we are both inside the smoke screen dropped by the destroyer. I think the Azuma there has just started to use his damage repair ability, so he is recovering himself, but that guy took a fearsome beating. Now, I wasn't aware of this at the time, but again, as I came around the corner of that iceberg earlier with the Azuma with his 16-inch guns pointing towards me at that kind of range, I'm not going to be able to score plunging fire on him. Because the trajectory of the shells would be much more flat because the range was short. But the Azuma's armour is apparently quite terrible, so armour piercing would have been a better choice of ammunition. Now that Ranger is steaming away at full speed. The destroyer's catching him, but I can't afford to mess around with broadside shots at him anymore, or he's going to get away. Not a terrible situation, of course, because one of my rear gun turrets has been knocked out, so I'm only really losing a third of my firepower by engaging him in a stern chase. He's sending more dive bombers out. Again, they're going for the destroyer. Makes sense. Yeah, destroyer took a nasty old hit there from the dive bombers. But my anti-aircraft defences are able to cover the destroyer, or at least my 5-inch anti-aircraft guns are, and I do have a lot of them. Yeah, he's definitely focusing on that destroyer, and that's probably really pissing that destroyer off. Okay, come on. I need to get some HE hits on that. There we go. Bingo. Set him on fire. Ooh, Cleveland. Enemy Cleveland. I can broadside this guy and get my rear gun turret firing at him. And he's seen me. And here it comes. And he's got all of his gun turrets in action. But I have something that he doesn't. A lot more health. Watch this. There he is. There goes my high explosive. And there he goes. And now I can focus on this carrier again. The Ranger is a pretty quick carrier, but he's been forced to turn because he's running into the edge of the map, and this means I am able to close the distance and start, with any luck, scoring some reliable hits on him. In fact, I'm now broadsiding to get that single surviving aft gun turret firing on him as well. Once again, carrier. I need to set him on fire so he can't launch aircraft. And there it is. I have scored some pretty impressive damage on carriers with armour piercing. But it's generally always safer just to fire high explosive at them because you can never tell when he's going to get his damage repair. Ability off cooldown, put the fires out and then launch a load of torpedo bombers at you. Having said that, at the end of the day I am in a Cleveland class light anti-aircraft cruiser, so yeah. Bring it, bitches. Launch more aircraft at me, it's just more aircraft kills. And I am actually scoring citadel penetrations on this guy with high explosive. Again, it's extreme range, so the plunging fire is just going through his wooden flight deck, directly through the elevators and exploding inside his hangar. Would have done a lot more damage if I'd been firing armour piercing, because the damage potential of armour piercing shells is higher than that of high explosive, but as a carrier it's just safer to keep pummeling him with the HE, and you can see the smoke and flames coming out of his smokestacks, his funnels there. That means his engine's been knocked out. I think it was the destroyer that did that. So I'm going to have to start shortening the range here of my guns and pretty much aim straight at him as he slows down to a halt, because I really, really want this kill. Destroyer's popped his smoke screen again. Not entirely sure why. I'm not really paying attention to the destroyer. Possibly that guy managed to get some dive bombers away and the destroyer's taken evasive action, but he's still firing at him. Come on, I want this kill. Let me get this kill. I've set this guy on fire multiple times. Yeah, we got the kill. Fantastic. And yes, the destroyer has dropped a smoke screen in order to try to protect himself from that surviving wave of dive bombers that's coming in. Extreme range, enemy cruiser. Plunging fire. Even though this guy is behind that iceberg. Bingo. Can still score hits. The shots are coming from almost directly above. Don't know how much damage I did because he was out of line of sight, but And you can see the dive bombers going in after that destroyer again. At the moment, dive bombers can only be loaded with high explosive bombs, which makes them not very good against battleships, but particularly dangerous against destroyers. And that destroyer's going for that cruiser. That's of course going to make life more interesting for carrier drivers, because what ammunition choice are you going to load into your dive bombers? High explosive, very good for dealing with pesky destroyers who are chasing after you, although the carrier driver did get pretty unlucky because that destroyer was being escorted by a Cleveland. And there goes the cruiser, and that Izumo finally went down, and that is the end of that match. This was a pretty impressive result. It did not feel like that impressive a result when I was playing it, but look at that. That's 375,000 credits and over 5,500 experience, base experience, in that match. I'm in a tier 6 light cruiser in a tier 9 game. 2,500 base experience. That, I'm pretty sure, is the most I have ever scored in a game of World of Warships. And the damage that I did actually fire some armor piercing. I don't remember doing it, but I've been around here long enough to know that there are going to be a couple of hundred of you going back through the video to find the exact point at which I did fire armor piercing ammunition. But 70,000 damage done with high explosive. And not only that, I set ships on fire so often that they burned for another 40,000 damage. Who needs armor piercing when you're in a cruiser? To be fair, I would have done more damage in that match if I had switched to armor piercing ammunition at the correct moment. But I'm certainly not complaining about doing over 110,000 damage in a tier 9 match in a tier 6 light cruiser. I do love the Cleveland. It is a fantastic ship, and this match just illustrates that it really doesn't matter what tier you are. The Cleveland, even in a tier 9 match, if people ignore it and leave it alone and don't bother shooting at it, it will absolutely wreck faces. The tier difference here in World of Warships is nowhere near as much of a factor in deciding the outcome of the battle as the tier difference is in World of Tanks, for example. Anybody can kill anybody in World of Warships. Doesn't matter whether you're tier 6, 7, 8 or 9, you're still a force to be reckoned with if you drive the ship well and people leave you alone for long enough, as you can see by the results of this match. So that was the monster high score game in the Cleveland that I promised you in my USS Cleveland review earlier on this week. And those of you wondering what that snorting noise in the background, that is a little dog, the mighty Boo, asleep in my lap. I think he's chasing rabbits in his dreams. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the replay. I certainly enjoyed playing that game. I hope you enjoyed watching it half as much as I enjoyed playing it. And as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.